Hi guys. Today we received a question from Abe. His question, a couple of questions actually. Uh, was I ever offered a bribe? No. And that would be uncommon. That would be like an alpha actually striking up a deal. It doesn't really. I'm not saying it does not happen, but it doesn't happen in that way. Uh, the the good thing about our team, the team that was specifically assigned to, is that we were constantly being shuffled. We were never in a station more than 7 months at one time. We would go back to different stations, sure, but to be permanently more than 8 months, that never happened. No, and that was on purpose, just for the fact of getting too comfortable, um, working something out with somebody, and the times that I did spend 7 times somewhere, you do get to know the people who cross. You do get to know the people who actually do business and through your port. And as for how common it is for Border Patrol or for actual customs, Border Patrol would be almost on a more of a difficult way because the fact that you're not always overlooking, you're not always working the same area. It's a broad enough space where you're always different mixtures, different roles, uh, checkpoints. There's too many people that are actually involved in that actual operation. It's not just a one or two person. Uh, well, I take that back. Sometimes there is, but to actually know when that's going to happen, it'll be kind of hard. And the fact that there's certain regarding climate and regarding manpower that some checkpoints actually do not get manned for a certain amount of hours. And but there's still out patrols. There's still patrols out there, and they are very skillful at detecting people's body language. Even at a high rate of speed, you you can you can tell from a lot of movements that something's up with this car, and you pull them over, and man, they're really talented. I give them that. And that's the thing with the border patrol. And there's a couple of siblings that worked out of San Diego, and you know I've gone back and forth with one particular commentator, and he was giving me some insight, but I guess it would take a couple of people to be in on it to make it work because it would be really hard to be out in the field in your vehicle in terrain to actually pull something off like that. And it would take some planning and it would take some execution that needed to be done perfect. And that to me would be high risk. But these guys pulled it off, and these guys pulled it off for millions, for millions. And when is it enough, you know? And as for Border Patrol too, is there tends to be more of a when you're out on the line, when you're actually down at the actual the fence. You know, there have been a few uh, agents who picked up duffel bags, like I mentioned in one of my the inheritance video, but just to ride along the fence and just pick up bags for their actual co-conspirators. But you know, they could be friends, they could be family, and that's how my majority of fall into that. You know, and not to be saying that that's what their intention was to actually go through with that, and because you don't know where you're gonna get sent out. I mean, I've met friends that um, not even actually met them, you know, out here in the city, and then they ended up going border patrol, and they got sent to these rural. I mean, out of nowhere, where the next town would be 4 hours away, and they'd be set up in a little I mean town, you know, where actually there's actually grocery stores and stuff like that. These other towns that they landed in were Connex boxes, were on the middle of nowhere, you know, like little, I don't want to say dumps, but you know, towns that were not kept up, you know, and basically they're out on their own out there, and they gotta rent an apartment where there's three or four or five of them that share that apartment just for the fact that they don't want to drive all the way back to where their family is during the time they're at work. So it's much easier to just do it that way, and they all just share an apartment and just make it work, you know, make it work, and everybody has different shifts and everything, but just had to adapt. It was more like almost like a military type, because you had to make it work with water, with food, and I'm not just saying food like dinner stuff, like snacks to actually make, you know, survive on, you know, just to not to survive, but just to keep you healthy, actually, you know. And but on the custom side, or immigration side, wow, that's a different story. The honey traps they laid for these guys, and I'm not saying that all the honey traps led to corruption. No, no, don't get me wrong. I'm talking about marriage, you know, and the majority of them, they found their wives at the port they work on, because you see different, well, you see the same people that do business there cross on a daily basis, sometimes even two times, three times. So you get to know people, you know, you can become friendly, and it happens. But I'm not saying that all the honey traps were actually for the purpose of making a person corrupt, but that was a major tactic that there was used. And I remember, see, don't forget that I didn't find out till all the corruption, not unless it happened while I was there, or actually when I was working there. I didn't find out till almost 10, 15 years later. And I was given a picture of the majority of them, just like you would have like America's Most Wanted, or FBI pictures, just everybody lined up. Uh, but they took they took this website down, and you just click on the picture, and all their charges were, and what court they came out of, the date, the charge that they were actually convicted on, and that page was big. That page was really big, and some of them didn't have names, so but I knew a few of them, you know, that you know, sometimes you just forget the name you put, you know, don't remember. I remember a face, you know, and I remember this particular one. This guy was getting plastic surgeries just to make himself look younger, because they were just throwing out, you know, putting the honey trap for him and having a young wife at home. And that's another thing too, is that the majority of these inspectors are, they're up there in age, and they're entertaining. I'm not saying teenage honey traps, but I'm saying, you know, in their 30s, and these guys are in 40s, 50s, entertaining 30-year-olds, you know, and falling for that, and now working on plastic surgeries and stuff like that. Although there was one inspector, he was a, it was actually pretty cool, man, because she took care of him. He was probably in his 50s, a little bit overweight, Caucasian, and he married a Oaxaquita widow, and she had two teenage daughters. And when we were socializing, social stuff, you know, he would bring them along, and they would just look so weird, but at the same time, it was such a good sight to see them communicate, because English and Spanish, right? He knew a little bit of Spanish. He knew enough, you know. But two cultures just from the opposite sides of the world just work making it work, and it looked so cool, you know. And I all respect to that to his wife because she held it down, man. Tell you what, he never ate out in the streets during lunch. He always had his lunch. It was just cool to see. So it did work out sometimes, and the majority of the inspectors at the ports at crossing where pedestrians cross or where vehicles cross, they do match up with if they're single, or not even if they're married too sometimes. But that's a different story. Actually hook up, but they do set that honey trap, and I'm gonna say that I actually witnessed two of them actually. One of them was already in progress, and I wasn't close to him in a sense of friendship, but I was how you can say it, I was around him, not as a friendship, but I happened to be around this guy for a while, and he ended up getting busted. And I'll that story is actually on my first playlist with Shadow. It's the one with the two Border Patrol agents in the actual green uniforms. Uh, that first story is actually what I'm talking about right now. And man, I mean, I saw it at mid relationship, and then towards the end, and it was quite a show. It was quite a show. And they were both grown adults, and they were both playing with real life consequences. And I don't know what happened to the girlfriend, but he ended up. The last I read in the actual paper, because you don't go on around and ask, you don't go around and ask what happened, this because it's just not cool. He was looking at 18 to 20 years. After that, I could not. I to this day I cannot find anything, and he was going to take it to trial. He was not going to budge. And don't forget, it just takes one person out of 12 to convince. Everybody says, "Oh, they're going to take your chances on the jury." Oh, you know what? You had 12 chances to walk away, and that might have happened, or else he should already be out if he didn't get any other charges inside. This guy was an older cat. He was retired Navy. He was real cool, real solid, and he was real smooth. I'm talking, he was smooth, man. And he's, you know, he, but he made some bad choice. He made a bad choices. And towards back to the question of the bribes. The hunting traps are set. Border Patrol most likely with some inside help or actually some outside help too. Most of the time, they're relatives, good friends, or somehow they associate outside of the business, and it would be really uh, out of character for someone to come up to you and say, "Boom, take this bribe and we're done. Take this 100, take this 1,000, and we're good." I don't see that happening because it could be a trap for that agent too through internal affairs. And as for me, I can honestly tell you that I don't know because that was never presented to me ever. And for me to sit here and talk about this and say I would never take a bribe, I'd be a lie. We're all human. We all have needs. We all have necessities. We all needed some help sometimes. But I can also tell you that I was never asked, so I can't say I would never take them. And as for actual, because they say they had immigration back then, for actually immigration inspectors, uh, you could hook some people up. You could actually hook some people up. You could actually make it work. You actually make it work, and that was another thing too is you had to be careful. You had to be careful who you gave advice to. You had to be careful because if you give some kind of advice and this person's already breaking the law by being here illegally, whether it be a relative or a friend or a distant relative, they'll get you for aiding and abetting. That's another charge too there too. And another thing too, before I forget, when these guys were actually dating females that would cross often, do business over here, and stuff was not going right between them, or they weren't actually happy with the answers they were getting from the particular girlfriend or fiance, these guys would look up, see how many times they would cross, and to look at the times and the dates they would cross the border because it's all there's a way to find out, correct? And these guys went out and checked the computer systems and see how many times they crossed, and all that is actually all that information that you submit to behind your password, your code into your computer, all that stuff is actually monitored by a company, by an agency. They're actually monitored and they're actually, they can pick up patterns. They can actually say this guy had no business pulling up his name. Why is his name being pulled up? This guy hasn't been looked up in years crossing the border. Why is he all of a sudden picking up his name out of the air, right? It happened quite often too. Man. It happened quite often. And you just had to be very, very careful. You just had to be very, very private with your conversations too, because uh, it happens. You know, people eavesdrop, people take it for what it's not, and and the only thing that I've heard of that is possible, that is very, very possible, that it could happen is when a line agent is actually processing vehicles up to the actual line at the port, you can disconnect the plate reader. I don't know. I'm sure by now that they fixed that glitch where an alert comes up if that thing is disconnected. But that's how the majority of the agents actually pulled everything through. So there wouldn't be no record of the actual vehicle coming through. So they would just disconnect the plate reader and nobody would know. You know, because a lot of things could happen and a lot of things don't get checked on a daily basis. They'll get checked eventually, but not as often. All right, guys. Hopefully, I have answered your question, Abe, and thanks for the question, and thanks for the idea for the video. Talk to you guys later. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks, guys.